Good evening. It is Monday, February 26th, 2024. Welcome to episode 52 of Porterhouse and Teal Live. Tonight's episode, we'll be discussing the border crisis and trying to make some sense of a very important issue, which is undoubtedly on the minds of many of the people in this country. There really hasn't been really much of an effort by any of the elected officials to explain how or why this invasion at our southern border has been occurring and what they're intending on doing to stop it. I have many questions and I also have a few theories about it. And the title for tonight's episode it's a quote, and it's something that I didn't make up. It's a nation that cannot secure its borders. A nation that cannot control its borders is not a nation. And that comes from our 40th president, Ronald Reagan. That's something that we will be discussing here shortly. But how are you tonight, Rebecca?
I'm doing great. We are expecting our 7th grandbaby, and we don't know what it is. But that baby is 2 days overdue right now. So we're just waiting patiently.
Yeah, for sure. Seems like our daughter always tends to go over by about a week or so. So she's right on schedule as far as not having it on her due date. But we're excited about that. And hope all is well with you guys out there for sure. It's been pretty awesome here this past week. Things have been drying out a little bit. We got a little bit of a reprieve from all of the rain that we've been having. And we've had some very nice warm days. Mid 70s for the past couple of days. Today wasn't nearly as warm, but there's a lot of signs out there of the impending spring that's upon us, I guess. Mm-hmm. We got a lot of bud swell in our trees. We're starting to see the buds in the trees. And then also too, we're getting a lot of daffodils are starting to pop. They started about 2 weeks ago. And that's always something I kind of look forward to seeing in the springtime. I planted daffodils around here. Man, it's been like 20 years since I first put daffodils in. And I guess at the time, I didn't even really know what I was planting or much about them or what have you. But they are a pretty amazing thing to put into the ground. For one, they're just a perennial thing that will continually bring you that aesthetic beauty and pollination and all of those sort of things that you can expect just year after year without doing really anything. And at the time when I planted them, I didn't realize it, but I planted daffodils and I also planted tulips. And those daffodils are still here. And the tulips didn't even make it a year because unbeknownst to me at the time, I didn't realize they were candy for gophers. So daffodils are something that, gophers don't mess with. So they're really actually a really great thing. One of the things I would say that isn't so great about them is that they really just kind of have a short bloom season. They're really only going to give you about 2 weeks of flower, if that. But there's about 40 different varieties of them to choose from. And they've got, different blooming like seasons. You can get them early season, mid-season, late season, which will take you all the way through about this period in through February through almost to May, depending on the varieties that you get. But, we just got ours down at Home Depot, but if you get them down there as well, you can see they've got different types and they're actually not even called daffodil. That's just their common name. Their genus name is Narcissus. But super great plant to plant. And I'm using them kind of around here. I'm taking and transplanting them in the fall, pulling some of the ones up that have multiplied, and then I'm dividing those up and putting them in some of the beds where I'm trying to, just establish some gilded type of arrangements in some of the edible landscapes that I'm trying to develop around here. But pretty pretty good thing to plant for sure.
I think you put out some California poppy as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I spread some seed on that, and that's kind of a good thing to have out as well because it just kind of reseeds itself. But when we first moved here, we actually had a number of California poppy out in our field, but through the years of overgrazing and mismanagement of our pasture, we kind of eradicated it. But I've sought to, bring that sort of thing back in. So, yeah, it's definitely, spring is such a good time of the year. I don't know. I put out a poll to the community, I guess, last year or so, and asking people what they thought of the different seasons and which was their favorite. And, I was surprised at the result from that. I would have thought more people would have sided with spring as being their favorite, but I don't think it actually played out that way. But that's actually probably my favorite season, just because of the sense of like renewal. You're coming out of winter, which is, a little drab and kind of wet and cold and everything. And then it's just a season of renewal. So I'm just always really thrilled with springtime. And we're starting to harvest some things out of the garden. We're getting our asparagus are coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And
they're delicious.
Yeah, Rebecca's been pulling those and cooking those. And I don't know how many of you guys grow your own asparagus, or even if you like asparagus, but that again is another perennial food source that is quite amazing. It takes a little while to get it established. It's going to take you probably 3 years for it to, be fully ready to harvest. But once it is established, it'll last you, 20 years plus. And again, perennials for the win for sure. We planted in our last planting, we planted Mary Washington, Jersey Giant, and Purple Passion, which is what you can go down and buy actually right now at Home Depot. They have all 3 of those varieties. Those are fairly common variety that they'll have at stores like that. But you can order whatever it is that you want to order. But I mean, there's no substitute for growing your own food in that way. And then the flavor, and it just doesn't compare to what you buy in the store, right?
Yeah, they're really tender, where a lot of times when you buy them in the store, they're pretty tough. You have to cut them pretty far up to get to a tender part. So you're losing almost half of your asparagus unless you get them close to fresh. And that's just a guess how fresh they actually are.
Right. Yeah, no, they're just the flavor. I mean, yeah, they're tender, but just the flavor itself, it's just so much better. And, we also eat a lot of like lettuce and salad and stuff. And so around here, we grow our own lettuce almost year round. It's kind of nice living in an area where it doesn't get hard freezes, but we've got a one bed that's specifically dedicated to just growing our lettuce. And I put usually 4 different types of leaf lettuce in there. And then through the course of the year, I'll, have to successively plant that as the lettuce grows up and it winds up maturing and bolting. It gets a little bit bitter, and then you're going to need some successive crop behind that. But we grow lettuce around here every year, every season, but summer. Summer, it won't last when it gets really super hot. But, I've got a little low tunnel on one of my beds out there that basically tilts up and then can, close down at night to, just give you a little bit of a season extension, gives you a few degrees of warmth in there, which might help to keep it from actually freezing when you get close to that freeze zone. But yeah, what else we've been doing around here? I know that I talked her out of some more money for another fruit tree. So
always.
Yeah, I put in another fruit tree, which is one that I had not had either. And it was based on a recommendation from my son-in-law. He's got this one and he says, "Oh, you got to have it." And so I went and got it. It's an aprium, which is an interspecific hybrid that is a cross between an apricot and a plum. And it's the cultivar is called Cotton Candy. It's a cotton candy aprium. And so a lot of people seem to really like that one. I have never planted it. I don't have any apricots on the property. I like apricots. She really doesn't. So I'm not trying to plant things that she doesn't specifically like to eat.
Well, I think we talked about that last week. The reason why I don't, because I had an apricot tree growing up and always had to clean up after it. So
right.
It's not my favorite.
Yeah, and then also this week I started making some trench biochar, so I will be coming out with a video on that in the next, I don't know, couple of weeks or so. I shot some content on that, so if people are interested to see how I, how and what I do as far as making biochar in the ground rather than in the retort, I've got a little short video coming out on that. But yeah, just doing some property cleanup and trying to plug away at trying to get some of the things done around here that, the rain is kept on the back burner, but it's nice to dry out around here this week for sure.
Got a gate hung.
I did?
The one walking gate.
Oh, yeah.
We were working on that.
Yeah.
I was standing in the chicken yard, and we have young chickens that just like to peck. So I'm trying to help him hang a gate, and they're pecking at the back of my legs.
Yeah. We're just moving forward, and hopefully, as things dry out and we move further into spring, we'll, be getting even further down the road on some of our goals, because that's really the big focus that I have. And, it gives me a lot of satisfaction to know that we're actually moving forward around here instead of, just bitching about stuff all the time. Let's get to some Q&A. I had a person ask, and I think it was Sylvia Gibson had asked, and this was just specific to, she saw one of the leg bands. She saw one of the leg bands on one of our chickens and asked, is that a yellow band on the leg? If so, what's the reason for banding? And I was basically just telling her what we do with our banding, and the reason why we band is just to identify certain chickens, whether it be, it's mostly because of most of our chickens kind of look similar. They're of a similar breed. And so as they mature into that, at least that first year age, they can start looking all the same, and you don't know if that's one from the previous year or not. So we identify the flocks based on the year. And so each year gets a specific color. And then if there's any specific reasons we want to identify a particular bird, we'll tag that bird too. And we just put a single zip tie. We buy a pack of colored zip ties. There's like 4 or 5 different colors in there. It's like a pack of, I don't know, 50 or whatever. And then that's what we use to tag them. But you can buy leg bands from wherever that sells chicken products. But to me, that's like it's unnecessary when you can buy something for $1.99, at Harbor Freight or someplace like that, instead of spending a lot of money on something specifically for tagging and banding chickens. So,
but I've seen you band both legs for one of the chickens that was kind of aggressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had to do that because this chicken was, she was just being a bully. And it's like, well, you're either going to leave the property or you're going to not be a bully. And so I wound up banding her so that I could bind both of her legs so she wasn't up attacking the other birds. And I think she eventually wound up leaving the property. But that was, a possible solution into getting her to be less aggressive, because she certainly was. Had another question, and this one is related to a short that I had put out, and it was just showing what Rebecca does around here with her trapping efforts. I wind up concentrating mostly, as far as rodent control around here, on our gophers. But she is somebody who's been trapping mice for years around here. And I will say that when we had cats, it wasn't nearly as much mice. When we had actual good cats where they could be out at night doing their thing. But the problem is that there's other things out doing their thing as well. And we wound up losing a tremendous amount of cats over the years, which kind of sucks, right? I don't like getting animals just to feed them to other animals in that regard. But it's hard to find a good barn cat, one that doesn't just sit on your porch and want to be fed. If you find one that actually is a good hunter and a good mouser, that occasionally you can feed them just to let them know, hey, this is your house. But then they're out there all day hunting gophers, they're hunting mice and all those sort of things. But we don't have that any longer. And what we found when you go out at night And I think this is what a lot of people who have property, who have livestock, who have a homestead or whatever, if you're feeding animals, there's going to be a little bit of waste. And there's just, it depends on the feed source that you have around, but there's always going to be those types of rodents out on a homestead. And most people probably don't realize to what extent they're actually on your property because you're asleep at night. But if you go out there at night, I'm sure you would probably find things running around. And we've done that before where we go out in the chicken yard at night or something for whatever reason, and there's like mice running everywhere or that's primarily where we've seen them. But we used to get them a lot in the house. And so we prefer to try to trap them out there rather than waiting till they come in the house and get into our cupboards to start trapping them in the house. So we're pretty aggressive on the outside of that. She's been doing it for many years. And maybe you can just speak, Rebecca, to what it is that, you do or how you trap them or what you use to bait with, because that's what this person's asking. They said, what are you baiting with? I have a lot of them, but they appear to be getting their food elsewhere.
Well, I have found that there's two different kind of traps out there. One is the Victor. And then there's another one. I don't know the name of it, but the side that you would paddle it or bait, it looks like a cheese paddle. And I have found those to be just garbage. So I go with the Victor and I bait them with cheddar cheese, sharp cheddar cheese. They seem to like that. I've tried peanut butter. I've tried Parmesan cheese, a number of different things. They like the cheddar cheese. And what I have found is that they're smart and they can come up from the backside and actually eat the cheese and not get trapped. So I will tend to set two traps kind of angled in at each other. So what I'll find in the morning is the cheese is gone on one and the mouse is in the other one. And that's pretty much how I catch them. But I also kind of look around to see where I might find some droppings, and that's kind of where I choose. Or in this instant, like I caught two out of, I noticed that there was like a hole from our dog kennel that led into the chicken yard. And I set my traps, like I said, kind of like at a V shape. And this morning I was surprised because I had a mouse in each one of them. So it's a...
Yeah. Well, how many did you bag this morning, last night? Like 4, right? You got 4 last night?
Yes.
Yeah.
There was 4 last night. And so close to 8 to 10 on the week.
Yeah. So she's, bagging anywhere from 8 to a dozen of these things a week out there. And like I say, you probably wouldn't even know that you had them unless you're trapping them out there. So, we don't see them in our house right now. We haven't had them in our house for years, but that's because she's so aggressive on the outside, always cleaning them up. And I don't know. I don't have any love for mice, quite honestly. But
well, a lot of my traps too start with kind of around the border of the house, and then I move a little bit further out.
Yeah. Hey, good evening, Skanes Girl and Sandy Sutton and Tim Riley. Evening to you all. And Tim is asking, have you tried the bucket traps? Well, yeah, I actually have 4 bucket traps out there. And I catch quite a bit of in there as well. I mean, I don't know. I probably catch half a dozen or more a couple times a week, depending. I've got 3 that were caught last night and the one out here. And then I got one in the garage that catches mice. And essentially all it is a bucket where I put like black oil sunflower seed in there. They seem to really like that. And then I'll sprinkle a little bit of chicken feed in there just to kind of give it some different smell. And then if I want to, on my ramp, because I just have a little ramp with a cleat on the back of it, which helps to keep it from sliding off the bucket. And I'll just put that on it. And then I'll smear a little peanut butter on it just to kind of give it another scent that is going to maybe attract them. But I've got actually a bucket out in the chicken yard that's kind of flush mounted. And so what I mean by that is the bucket is dug into the ground. So it sits at ground level. And then I take another bucket and nest it inside of that. So there's really no ramp. It's almost sitting at the ground level. And the reason why I'm using 2 buckets is because I can pull that bucket out and refresh it. And then the other bucket's just basically a receiver in the ground. And I've got I got 2 that committed suicide last night, and there's no food in it. So I don't know, maybe mice aren't as smart as we give them credit or something, but yeah, I've got buckets out here, and they certainly do work. Right.
There's one laying out there cold. His legs are out.
Yeah.
On his belly.
Yeah. Skane says, spring is my favorite. It's only about 2 weeks here. Goes from cold to beautiful, then hotter than 80s. Yeah. I don't know, man. It's like that here sometimes too. We get a lot of heat in the valley, and sometimes I actually look forward to it, but for the most part, I'm not like hugely in favor of it, because if you're trying to be outside and work, I mean, it's just brutal. Just the sun just feels so oppressive sometimes, but I'm used to it being about 90 degrees. I can hang with 90 outside doing my thing, but then it gets up to 100. And then when it gets over 100, which it tends to do here at least once or twice a year for a few weeks, it can be pretty miserable, because it usually doesn't cool off at night either.
I would say spring for me, except for I have allergies. So
right.
I dislike spring for that reason.
Right. Had one more, had one more Q&A question I wanted to address. And this one was from Larry Sorensen, 4789. And he says that he added coffee grounds to his favorite flower bed. Apparently a fungus survived the coffee making process, because within 2 months I saw clumps of fungus. I took them out and threw them away. It came back. Eventually I had 7-foot by 2-foot bed with solid fungus. I took it all out, went down over a foot, and threw everything in the trash. Then he bought 5 bottles of vinegar and applied it with a garden spray. Waited 2 weeks before flushing all the soil, and then brought in new dirt. I don't know. I don't know if I would have went with the vinegar thing. Maybe that's a remedy. I don't know. That seems to me like it might be kind of harsh for all the soil life and everything like that, being kind of maybe highly acidic. But one thing to consider if you're using coffee grounds is that anytime you have coffee grounds which are rich in nutrients, anything rich that's nutrient dense, that's wet or moist, that does not have sunlight, is going to have the opportunity to grow mold. And so we get that in our coffee grounds that we get. We get a lot of coffee grounds from our connections, and they come in these little bags, and they just reseal them up into the bags that they came from originally, the used and spent coffee grounds, and they're still wet, damp, or whatever. And then they'll sit there for a while. And if we don't use them right away, then they'll develop mold. And, I think it's just important to understand that there is some good mold, and then there's some mold that maybe you want to be concerned about. So if you're going to be using coffee grounds, just do your research in that regard. Like, for instance, green mold is like something that is not really of concern. Brown mold, same type of thing. White mold, probably going to be fine. But when you start getting into like off colors, like black or like red or yellow, some of those molds can be pretty damaging. So I wouldn't consider using those even in a composting type of a scenario. So it's just one of those things that you kind of have to know with regard to coffee grounds. Another thing too is they should be not like wet and slimy. If you have something that's slimy, that's probably a good indicator that you wouldn't want to use something like that. So it should be dry rather than being, wet and slimy. So why don't we get to the did you know portion of the evening? And that's going to be up to this one right here. So what do you got?
So did you know that chickens are not able to taste spicy? Did you know that?
I did know that, but only because I learned that recently, not because it's something that I knew from back in the day.
Yeah, they lack the receptor that allows them to taste spicy.
Right. I do believe that to be true, because I've fed them spicy things and it doesn't seem to affect them. one thing I would say, even though they don't have the ability to taste it, it doesn't mean that you can just go ahead and feed them an overabundance of spicy things, because it's going to still have an effect on their digestive system. So yes, they may not taste it. That may be a reason why you wouldn't want to feed them an unlimited amount of spicy type things. But yeah, I fed them peppers and stuff like that, and they, they'll go after it, and it doesn't seem to really affect them. So yes, that I did know that, but only recently did I know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And did you know that the heaviest egg, and it was laid in 1956, was 16 ounces?
Yeah, I think you got to really think about that one.
As one big egg.
That's from a chicken. That's
a chicken egg, yes.
Right.
And if you work with grams instead of ounces, that would be 454 grams.
That is massive. That is a massive egg. I mean, I can't even fathom that, because the largest eggs we had laid in the last couple of years, and our hens do lay a pretty decent sized egg. They lay what is considered a jumbo egg. So it's like routinely around 70 grams. And we had two last year that were laid from our Novagens that came in at 107 and 109.
Mm-hmm.
We had two eggs. One was 109 grams and the other was 107. And I'm telling you, these things look like a duck egg. They're big, man. And you're like, holy smokes, did that come out of a chicken? Well, yes, it did. But I can't even imagine something like 4 times the size of that. That's incredible.
That chicken's backside hurt.
Oh, must have been some kind of chicken.
And then the last one is, do you know how many yolks, the record for how many yolks were in one chicken egg?
I do not.
And that was laid in 1971, and it was 9 yolks. That's
intense. Yeah. I've read, because when we had those big eggs, I was thinking, oh man, maybe this is triple. Maybe it's a triple yolk, So I started looking up to see if like the frequency or how often that happens. And they were saying it's like 1 in some kind of million chances, 1 in 25 million that you'll get one that's like a triple yolk. I mean, so think about that. You said it was 9 yolks?
9 yolks.
Yeah.
So they said, if you have a chicken that's got 10 yolks, don't throw it away. Call Guinness Book of World Records.
Oh, for sure. Hey, how you doing, Laura? Good to see you tonight. Potpourri of Life's in the house, and Dollar General. Yeah, those chickens were having some rough times, man. Yeah, no doubt. No doubt about it. Yeah. Cool. I also threw up a poll yesterday. I threw up a poll on the channel, and that was something that I actually said that I was interested in trying to be more consistent about this year. That was one of the goals that I had written down, and I don't think I've even done one until just yesterday. So I'm trying to live up to some of the goals that I had established for myself, which was, one of them was to do a poll at least, once a month or what have you. Maybe I'll try to do more if people, want to participate in that. But I do appreciate the people that decided to join in on that. We had about 300 people that voted on that. And the question was, which one of these Homestead, basically fowl, feathered friends, if you will, which one would you choose out of these 4? And your choice was duck, guinea fowl, chickens, or quail. And thus the result, it was not in any way surprising. I think it was right about what I thought it might be. And chicken was the overwhelming winner, with 85% of the people who responded thought that they would prefer to have a chicken. And just for the record, that would be my choice of those 4. I just find them that much more useful for me in our context here on our property, with the composting that we do, egg production. You can eat them. All of those sort of things just resonate with me. Ducks are cool, and I understand people have a love for ducks, and some people actually chose that as what they would prefer. Probably a better meat animal, probably a better egg animal. But as far as composting and being able to work in that regard for you, not so much. With those feet, they're just going to like mat everything down, and they're just not really like great scratchers like a chicken. So that would be kind of a no-go as far as that aspect for me. But 8% of the people selected ducks, which came in number 2. And then third place came in was quail at 5%. And I think that would be almost more applicable to the people who actually can't have chickens, because I think those are a really great choice for people who would like to have eggs, possibly have meat, what have you, but maybe they live in an HOA or someplace like that where you have to be a little bit more stealthy about the livestock that you have. That would be a really good choice for somebody in that regard. But yeah, I've never raised quail. I know people who have, and that they seem to like them and all that sort of thing. But and then lastly, and this wasn't a surprise either, last place was the guinea fowl. 3% said guinea fowl, and I'm actually maybe a little surprised that there was even 3% of the people that said that. I mean, like, you remember that we had a guinea fowl that just showed up here one day, and I'm like, look at that thing. You remember that?
That's the one in the front yard?
Yeah.
That you said, oh, hey, we'll keep that. We'll keep it up to a point. We kept it.
Well, he was quiet for like the first day and a half. I thought, oh, this is cool, man. He's going to go out and he's going to eat rattlesnakes and eat ticks and all the things they say that these things are good for. He's going to be a great watchdog. And then like I'm outside and all of a sudden he starts going off. He's like freaking out. And I'm like, wait a minute. And then he just wouldn't stop. And we kept him for like, and he'd do that at night. And I'm like, no, he's got to go. So he wound up leaving the property.
He went for a ride in the car.
Yeah, I took him down to the creek and just gave him some, where there's some water, and said, hey, good luck, buddy. But I don't know where he came from, whose he was, or whatever, but he had to go. Those things are something else, man. You've never seen or heard a guinea fowl. They are something else. But hey, thanks for participating in that poll. That was kind of fun. I like doing those. So
back to the mice traps.
Mm-hmm.
If you set them in your chicken yard, make sure that you cover them with a milk crate or something, because the cheese, it's just far too tempting for the chickens, and it's pretty hysterical when they get snapped in the beak. But
yeah, they're very curious critters. Yeah, well, cool. Let me do this. yeah, man. I don't. No, actually, somebody did love the guineas. Like I say, I'm surprised that they did, but yeah, I've heard they're really good for ticks, and they'll like play hell on rattlesnakes and all those sort of things. So there's obviously value in them, and some people really like them and have them. But man, they are so loud, man. I mean, it's like having a peacock. You ever hear those things making a noise? But yeah. So anyhow, let's move into the main topic. And tonight's main topic is the border policy, but quite honestly, I could have called it the non-existent border policy, because this issue really has been just a political football and a perennial issue for both sides of the aisle for many years. And neither party has really done much in a meaningful way to seriously address, any of the issues, with the exception of, Trump in the last administration. He was very aggressive with it. And I think that aggression and that forcefulness with securing our sovereignty here in this country from the standpoint of illegal immigration, I think that resonates with a lot of people. Despite what, you're led to believe by the media and all those sort of things. But, for the last 3 years, there's been a reversal of the previous administration's border policy. And that was something that was initiated on day one of the administration. There was an executive order that was issued day one. Just think about that for a minute, that you come in, you've got all these other concerns, but yet that's your number one priority, along with canceling the Keystone Pipeline, which halted the energy flow into the country. I mean, I don't even hardly like blame him specifically, because this is greater than him. This is an issue that was driven by the people that are driving the bus in essence. But nonetheless, there's been a dramatic increase in illegal immigration into this country, so much to the point that it's being referred to as like an invasion now. And it kind of came into my consciousness a few months back when I started to see a few things about, just all these people from different places that typically weren't people who immigrated here, but people coming from Africa and coming from China and coming, just like across the border. And you're like, how's this even happening and why? I think that there's been a lot of different figures being thrown around as to how many people have illegally crossed into the country. But regardless of what number any of us settle on and want to believe, the most recent number that I saw was like 7.2 million people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 7.2 million. And that's like since Biden took office in just his 3.5 years or whatever it happens to be. And those are just, of course, the people that we have caught, not the people that were getaways. But 7.2 million people have been added to this country illegally. And I guess the question that most people should have, I know that I have this question, is why is this occurring? What's the reason for it? Because obviously this is being done for a reason. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a number of factors and different theories out there as to why it's happening. And kind of that's what I wanted to discuss this evening. So,
and initially I had thought, well, this is, it's an election time. And so I was figuring, well, they're bringing them over here for votes. They're probably having them sign the paperwork right as they're coming over. And, here you go, sign your name. We're going to let you in the country type of thing.
Yeah, I think that there's an aspect to that. I was going to talk about that here in a little bit. Because I think that there's somewhat of an aspect of that. But yeah, I agree with you, man. I agree, Dollar General. That's maybe one of the thoughts as well, that you can't beat us from within. Let's bring in some help for that, right? So these are all theories that are out there. These are all reasons why people have the feelings that they have right now, because we haven't been given answers, right? So when we're not given answers, what are we going to do? We're left to speculate as to what these reasons are. And I think, if we're going to speculate and do it in a way that's thoughtful, we need to just do a little bit of homework and look into and try to figure out what's behind all this, because these are the first questions that I asked when I started seeing this. It's like, no, this is being done for a reason, man. They've got an agenda. This isn't just by accident that this shit is happening. I mean, you don't come in day one and reverse all of the policies of the previous administration. And then when things spiral out of control, it's like it's all by design. So I think the reason or the question again is why is that happening? What's the reason for it? Really, who wants them here? That's another question. Who are the people that want them here? And when we're talking about, I guess, the political class, the Democrats have traditionally wanted the vote, as you've mentioned, right? Mm-hmm. They want this dependent class. They want a permanent underclass of people that is there to be dependent upon them for assistance. And so that's always been the play of the Democrat Party. And so the Republican Party has traditionally wanted cheap labor, because somebody needs to pick the lettuce, right? Somebody needs to make the beds in the hotel room, and wash the dishes and all that kind of stuff that Americans don't seem to want to do. So we need that permanent underclass of cheap labor. So there's a play from both sides that always seems to just be there, and nobody really wants to deal with these issues. I don't know. I just think it's kind of gotten to the point where it's snowballed out of control right now. And given the fact that we're in an election year, right? Both sides are pointing the finger at each other to try to divert attention. Nobody wants fingerprints on this issue, right?
Well, that was the other thing that I thought was as they're coming over, everybody's focusing on that. And they're like, oh, hey, look over here. So you don't see what this hand's doing over here.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another reason why I thought maybe they were coming in.
That's always their, I think that's always their tactic, is to divert the attention away from what they're actually doing and get people pissed off about certain issues. But, it is an important issue. I really think this isn't one that just, merits us talking about it in pissed off tones or tones that don't, give it any real consideration. But, anytime anything happens, you have to look beyond what you just see on the surface and start asking questions. Question everything, right, guys? And so here's something I want you to listen to, and you may have already seen it, may have not. I don't know where people are with regard to their knowledge of this issue, how much they've been following these types of stories. So some of this you may have already heard. It may be old news to you, but I wanted to play this nonetheless.
Migration into the United States is at its highest levels ever.
Turn that heater off.
Tens of millions of people have come here illegally over the past 15 years, and none of them will ever leave. Mostly they come from the poorest countries on the planet. We don't know anything about them, really. We don't know if they're pro-America. We don't know if they're hostile to the people who already live here. We don't know, in the case of the recent arrivals, what they're going to do for a living as robotics eliminate low-skilled jobs. So what's happening right now at the border, though it's often mentioned on TV, is really undersold as a story. This is changing America forever, and almost certainly for the worse, as we're watching it, and no one is doing anything about it. The governor of Texas occasionally makes noises about it. It's over his border that this human wave is flowing, and yet he's taken no real steps to stop it. There are some media outlets that let you know that it's happening in general terms, but they don't seem particularly outraged by it. We're sitting here as our country is destroyed and no one's responding. And at some point you have to ask, why? Are the majority of Americans in favor of this? Of course not. In fact, no one's in favor of this. No one will defend this in public. No one will explain why we need it, why it's a good idea, how it's going to help this country, how your grandchildren will live in a better place because of it. People are just silent, like it's not even happening. And again, you have to ask why. And the answer, of course, is really simple, because they're afraid. They know they'll be punished if they say anything about it.
Yeah. Lot to think about there as far as what he had to say. I don't really think anybody's in favor of this. Quite honestly, it's just being rammed down people's throats, and we're not getting an opportunity to have our voices heard. And that's a real recipe for, I think, disastrous consequences for any nation, to not have the voice of the people being listened to. And, you've got people that are just doing their own thing, and it's affecting all of us. And again, I think it's one of those things that just requires some thoughtful consideration as far as how and why this is happening. How did they get here? That's the question that I had, I guess, months ago when I started thinking about this. I'm thinking, well, I get it coming from, South America. I understand that because it's these lands are contiguous. But when we start seeing people coming from other continents like Africa and China, I mean, these are vast oceans, 7,000 miles away or whatever. And these people are not flapping their arms. They're not swimming across oceans to get here. So they're either coming across on a plane or they're coming across on a boat. And it most certainly is probably not that inexpensive. It's expensive to fly anywhere. So there's probably a great cost associated with this. So how can people afford this, and why is it occurring? You've got these people coming from impoverished countries seeking asylum or looking for work. How can they afford to come here in that regard? It's just, these are questions that I guess that I have. And, why would this be supported on our end? That's the other question. There's a lot of money being exchanged. So who's benefiting, and to what extent are they benefiting? And what I've come to learn is that the NGOs are kind of the middle ground for the exchange of these funds being funneled to these illegal immigrants. And, you know, an NGO, what is an NGO? It's a non-governmental organization is what it stands for. And they are the ones that are reaping the benefits from an increase in all of these illegals and receiving large portions of taxpayer dollars, you know, from the federal government to subsidize these programs. And this will explain a lot. I want you to watch this video. Hopefully the audio is loud enough, but you get an opportunity to see people coming across the border and they're asking them, where are you from? And they're like, hey, I'm from wherever. I'm from wherever. And there's just people after people. And I've been watching this for months now, where there's just people by the thousands coming across the border from foreign lands. Many of these lands where they're not very friendly to us. There's a lot of hostility toward Americans from these particular places. And so it is quite concerning. But I want you to watch this because it will explain a lot regarding who's benefiting.
Gentleman right there in the red hoodie just got here. I was interviewing him he's from Senegal, didn't want to be on camera. We got those reports from Lukeville, Arizona, where thousands of illegals from Senegal and Mauritania are now coming to Cincinnati, Ohio.
Senegal.
Senegal?
Yes.
Where are you going?
I'm going to Cincinnati.
Cincinnati, okay.
Yeah.
Senegal?
Senegal.
Senegal? Senegal? Senegal?
Yeah, Ohio.
Ohio. Senegal? And Ohio? 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 Wow, a lot of Ohio. Senegal and then Ohio? Are you going to Ohio? Ohio? Mauritania?
Yes.
Mauritania? You want to see the reason for it is right here. Massive complex, Catholic Charities, Sukasa in Cincinnati, Ohio. One of the main beneficiaries of the invasion of our southern border, all making billions of dollars at taxpayer expense, inviting in the invasion. You want to know why our country's being invaded? Because the cartels are making billions and these leftist NGOs like Catholic Charities are making billions. And now Cincinnati, out of all places, guy just met here in the parking lot, coming in to get their checks. They said the reason they're coming to Cincinnati, huge numbers from Senegal coming to Cincinnati, is because big community here. So this is where you come to get your money, taxpayer dollars. All of this funded by taxpayers. Invasion of our country funded by you, the American taxpayer, going to organizations like this. Catholic Charities, Sukasa. Got a couple more going in right now. Just came into the building to show you a little bit more about what's inside here. So this entire building, multiple floors, taken up by Catholic Charities. We're just down on the 7th floor. You've got the Welcome Center where all the illegals come through. They can simply come upstairs. You've got WIC, all of these programs working together.
WIC
with
right
Catholic
there.
Charities, with all these organizations working together to take your tax dollars and fund the invasion of our countries. And right on the other side of WIC, Behavioral Health Services, Employment Services, free money, welfare, getting them jobs, your money, all paying for it. Well-oiled machine, guys, and this has been going on for years. This is not new. The main Catholic Charities organization is on the 6th floor, but they also control the 7th floor, and then you go to the 8th floor, and it's all connected, from WIC to all of the employment services, all of it connected to the same industry of illegal immigration. They're only one. There are 9 major organizations, and there are hundreds of smaller organizations all feeding at the same trough of U.S. taxpayers. Awesome, appreciate it, thank you. So I did just get confirmation from one of the employees that works here. Didn't want to be on camera for obvious reasons, but she said thousands now coming from Senegal and Mauritania. In fact, their entire program is having to change here because there's so many people coming. Where it used to be Spanish-speaking primary, now they're having to change it to French-speaking parts of Africa. And Fulani is actually one of the native languages spoke there. The guy in the airport I met today, he only spoke French and Fulani. So it just tells you the numbers that are coming through here in Cincinnati. It's wild. And all Senator Lankford and Chuck Schumer and these rhinos on the right and the Democrats on the left are doing with this border bill, or trying to do with it, is invite more of this. This is the death of our country if we don't stop it.
Yeah. So one of the things that I want you to key in on that, and I hope you guys were able to hear that from the audio, but it had those different businesses in there, or organizations, I should say. One being WIC, and WIC is a government program run by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and it stands for Women, Infants, and Children. And that is a program that, quite honestly, I would not be opposed to if, in fact, it was run in a way that was not being used in an inappropriate manner, because it's supposed to be for people who are nutritionally challenged, maybe single parents or whatever, and you've got infants and you've got children and you've got, people that actually need help. And I'm not unopposed to that sort of thing. I think those programs are good, but I don't think that those programs should be used to subsidize and funnel money to people that should not be here, legally. And that's part of the problem when you see things going on like that. And the reason why all these people, when they accost him at the border, just like he's done, and as many different videos I've watched of people asking these people, where are you from? Where are you going? And they're all, they all have a destination. They all know where they are supposed to go. They all know where, hey, this is the city that you're going to need to go. And they've got orders to go to these places so that they can receive their stipends or their funding or their housing or their whatever. And, I don't know. I mean,
Read what Potpourri put up there.
let's see here. Yeah, Laura says, years back, I was contacted by one of these organizations asking me to hire and train someone. I told her that I was not in the market to hire and train. If I was, it would be someone I knew. Yeah. I don't know. It's just, when you start to ask questions and you start to investigate a little bit, you start to realize it's more than what they're telling you on the surface. And there are people like this guy who's out there, beating back the narrative and trying to get to the bottom of some of these things. But these programs should not be used in that way, but yet they are. And it's at all of our expense. And these people are getting preferential treatment. They're going around to all of these places where these sort of charities and organizations exist. And it's all known. This isn't by accident, guys. And I think the more that you look into it, you'll realize, man, this is kind of nefarious what's going on here. Yeah, I agree, Tim. It is scary. And I do agree that dude, he's spot on. I've seen some of his other reporting as well. I mean, obviously he's got a political bias. He's right leaning, which, whatever. I'm right leaning. He's not trying to hide that, but he's also not trying to hide what's actually going on out there. And so for that, I commend people like that are willing to get out there and to tell the other side and just show you at the ground level what's actually taking place. Because you're not probably going to see this on 60 Minutes, right? You're not going to see this on the NBC Nightly News or BBC. They're not really going to talk about this shit. They're going to talk about what they want you to see. And so, like I say, I commend that guy for bringing this sort of thing to light, because it answers a lot of the questions that I think many of us have. Like, why is this occurring? How are they getting here? What's going on here? And so really that's what I hope to do in this broadcast. It's not just to complain about the issue, because the issue isn't going to change from what we have to say about it in our complaints. It's not just a sounding board to do that. It's to actually try to get to some fucking answers, because nobody else is really doing that from the mainstream side of things, and I'm trying to make sense of it, quite honestly. So, oh yeah, to your sewing business. Yeah. Huh. Yeah. Cool. I'm glad. So, NGOs, those are, they're nonprofit organizations, but a lot of those places, a lot of those organizations can have budgets in the millions. They have a lot of funds being funneled toward them. And so they've got large budgets. And even though they may be some 501(c) that's exempt from all these, regulations and taxation, get all these breaks from the government. But I mean, there's a reason that they get all those breaks and all those sort of things, because of it's a vehicle to funnel money. And, they put in a center here in our town, and I started looking into that years ago when they were talking about it, hey, we're going to build this homeless, like help center type of a thing, right? It's going to help people get back on their feet, and it's going to do this, and we're going to have so many beds, and we're going to have this, and we're going to have these kind of services, and it's all through this public-private partnership. And there's just nothing but a ton of different agencies, including the local agencies around here, that all kind of have their hand out to get into the trough to get some of that money. And it's just all really a big money grab when you start dealing with these NGOs. And, they rely on a variety of different funding sources. They get private contributions. They have maybe membership dues coming in, which is just another way to kind of like distract you from the fact that they're actually receiving a lot of their money from governmental contributions. That's another way that they receive money in NGOs, is governmental contributions. And I would say that that's probably a vast majority of where that money comes from, because it's money that these people didn't have to make. They just print it and then stick you with the bill as a citizen, right? Run up your taxes and inflate things and do shit like that. So do you think, Rebecca, that these NGOs are receiving funding from the federal government?
I do believe that they are. And I think it's probably kind of, I think it's kind of similar to because we both work for the government.
Mm-hmm.
And you knew how much you spent, and they wanted you to spend so that you would get more the following year. So you were given a budget, and if you didn't spend it all, then they would cut that budget back. So you were incentivized to go out and spend any remaining amount, and you would purchase on ridiculous things and
right
to spend all of that money so that you could get more the next year. And I think that these businesses are doing the same thing. That money is not coming back to the people, it's coming back to them.
Yeah, I don't think it was ever intended to come back to the people. It was, but to your point, I think that it's just a disassociation with the fact that I didn't have to earn this money, so it doesn't really matter. It's just government money. We'll just spend it because it doesn't matter. We need to keep our budgets rolling or whatever. And the same would hold true with what you were saying, maybe about the NGOs, because they don't really care. It's just more money. We'll get it from somewhere. The money will be there because it's a public-private partnership, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's all like a bunch of crony bullshit. And, I think it would be hard to imagine that they're not, since nothing that originates from Washington, D.C. isn't in some way tied to enriching their own political power through crony capitalism.
They have to have their hands in everything.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the way that I see politicians. They're not going to do anything unless it is for their political power to enrich them. That's it. They really don't care about the American people. They don't care about these immigrants. They could give two shits about any of us. The only thing that they care about is getting our vote and retaining power to keep us where we are in our social economic strata. That's it in its entirety.
And I think that, or at least I feel that these immigrants are coming over. I think they're being sold a bill of goods that are not going to materialize.
Of
they
course.
think they're coming over here to get a job.
Of course. I've already seen them bitching that we've got terrible treatment. They've left us out here for 3 days. They haven't done the things that we've been promised and all this stuff, man. We're already seeing illegal aliens that have come here illegally bitching about the treatment that they're getting.
Well, I think once the election's over, it's just going to get worse.
Oh, it's not even going to take the
Worse, 'cause
election.
They don't care about them.
No, it's going to get worse because these people aren't going anywhere. That's where it's going to get worse. They're not going home. They're fucking here. Okay. So it's not like the election isn't going to do nothing for them. All that's going to happen is it's going to make it worse for us because now they're here. You can't unring the bell is my point. And so the election is what it is. It's going to get worse for these people. Absolutely. It's going to get worse for all of us. Absolutely. Because we're not getting these people here. We're not getting the better end of the deal as American citizens is my point. You know, illegal immigration should be no shock to anybody that it's being supported by the current administration. And it was from day one. Let's take a look at this right here.
News alert happening right now. San Diego County is now mass releasing migrants onto the streets. Sources tell Fox News the city shelter simply ran out of funding. Bill Malugin is live in San Diego right now with the latest. Bill.
Emily, we just had bus number 5 pull up and mass release more illegal immigrants here on the streets of San Diego. This is the new group that just got off. We have had well over 300 people mass released here in the last hour and a half. Rich, let's walk this way real quick. We'll show the 2 separate groups. There's a lot of women, some men in this group. A lot of these guys over here are from Africa and from Guyana in South America. What's happening is NGO buses then come pick them up and take them to the airport and other transit centers. And you can see over here, some of them are calling taxi cabs themselves and loading into taxi cabs and then driving off. We've seen this happen multiple times. We've been talking to people from all around the world out here: China, Dominican Republic, Africa, Colombia, Peru, you name it. We've probably heard it at this point. They're going to all different sanctuary cities around the country. We're hearing a lot of New York, a lot of Chicago, some New Jersey. Take a listen to what some of the migrants told us earlier.
Let me skip forward here, guys, because
Comments that
this
they made
is
to you
he had a little technical difficulty.
Yeah, so we talked to different guys: Ecuador, Peru, Colombia, Dominican Republic, Senegal. Essentially, most of them were telling me they're here to work and they're going to different blue sanctuary cities. I asked one guy, "Are you here to work?" And he nodded his head and goes, "Yeah, no, I'm not." I said, "What, asylum?" He goes, "Yes, asylum." So think of that what you will. But just take a look. This is the buses picking these folks up. They cannot keep up. There's just bus after bus after bus from Border Patrol mass releasing these people to the streets of San Diego County. And again, they are planning to go all over the United States. An NGO bus will come scoop them up. And these volunteers out here tell them these buses are for free. Just stay here. They'll pick you up. They'll take you to the airport, or they'll take you to another transit center. I asked one of the volunteers, well, who's paying for these buses taking them all over the place? Is this San Diego County? They said, no, it's private money. I said, is it an NGO paying for it? They said, yes, we believe it's NGOs paying for it. Well, there needs to be an asterisk next to that, because keep in mind, FEMA is reimbursing a lot of NGOs with your money, with taxpayer money. So we don't know if this NGO here working this is getting reimbursed, but we know it's been happening all across the border and all across the country. So it's possible that taxpayer money is moving these migrants around to go to the airports, and they're heading to you guys in New York City. They're heading to Chicago. They're heading to New Jersey. We heard some Denver. We heard some Los Angeles. We heard Minneapolis. We've heard Atlanta. They are going to blue cities all around the country, and we've also been told this is just the start of these mass releases. We're expecting over 300 more later this afternoon. It's nonstop.
Yeah. So there you have it, guys. I mean, that's what's happening. What I've also seen recently is since Texas has clamped down, and good credit to them, they're doing the job that the federal government should be doing by securing their borders. But they shouldn't have to do that. But good on them for doing that, because they've been putting up with that shit for years of illegals just pouring across the border into their ranches and into their communities. And it's just gotten out of hand. And so they've clamped that down in Texas. And what's happening now is they're just flooding by leaps and bounds into California. They're coming through in that San Diego corridor down there in Yucumba and all that, down by Boulevard. I I'm pretty familiar with that area. I was on a fire down there in 2012, and it's right up against the border, man. I mean, it's like right there. You see this like, and there wasn't even a wall at that time. There was like a fence, but it was like a railroad tie, you know, and you could just hop over. And I'm sure there's places down there that are just like that.
Didn't you guys take a picture down there?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I actually took my hand crew, my inmates, and had them jump across the border. So we did, you know, something totally illegal. I took my inmates out of country. But it's happening down there. It's happening down there a lot. And I don't know, man. Like, let me see what people have to say here. Gearhead Gaming says Muslims have a harder time assimilating to the West, I think. I would say this. I would say that people that have no allegiance and alliance to this country have a harder time assimilating when they don't really know the cultural values of this country. And that could be Muslims, that could be anybody, you know, coming from wherever they're coming from. But we have people coming here from all over the world. I don't disagree with what you say, but you know, that holds true for a lot of people as well, I think. This right here, this dude, Gearhead Gaming says the people that are coming in have no idea what the truth is. Andrew Callahan, Channel 5 on YouTube, did a good border documentary. That's absolutely true. My son turned me on to this dude and started sending me videos of some of his documentary work on the inner cities. And now he's been working on some of the things that are happening on the border. And it's pretty eye-opening, man, to see like the raw nature of what a real reporter will put themselves through to get the story, instead of what we see sanitized version from mainstream or lamestream media. But yes, Andrew Callahan does some pretty solid work. And I did see his latest work on the border, where he got arrested, which was it's kind of funny, you know, and they gave him shit for 4 days. They detained him down there and just like, you know, messed with the dude, kept him detained for 4 days when they knew he was an American citizen, citizen journalist. But what I think they were actually doing is probably trying to make an example out of him so that it's not, you know, because he's going to go back and tell his story, right? He's going to put this on YouTube, and he doesn't want to make it look like, oh, these fucking border patrol aren't doing their job. So they gave him a bunch of shit and kept him detained for 4 days, when I'm sure they're not doing that for the people that are just pouring across the border, right? All these people coming from Senegal and Mauritania, are they being detained for 4 days? I think not. They don't have enough detention facility down there to do that. So again, you have to like read between the lines and question the things that you see. Let's see here. Hogs 14 says, if this keeps up, we'll be a third world. San Francisco, New York, Oakland, etc. It's just the beginning. Yeah, it's an interesting thing, man. You know, people have been talking about the death of an empire and what it actually looks like. And I think we're living through it. I think we're witnessing it right now. You know, this country was a great place to be for a lot of years, and there was a lot to be proud of. But it's really devolved into something that most of us, I don't think, anticipated. And it's sad because it doesn't have to be that way. These were great cities, man. San Francisco, New York City. These were destinations for people to go and want to go and see as a tourist. But people are frightened of these places now. You don't want to go to these fucking places and get your car smashed in and, you know, get stuff stolen or assaulted or whatever. It's just not okay. And I think what we're witnessing is the death of an empire. It's kind of happening in slow motion, where we're just seeing this stuff just like, oh man, this is getting worse, huh? Oh wow, look at all these like homeless people. Oh, now look at all these illegals that, guess what, are going to be homeless people as well. We're going to have a refugee problem. We've got millions of people just in the last 3 years that have been brought into this country. Maybe there's enough jobs for them. Maybe they will decide that, you know, I want to be a great American citizen and contribute, and I'm going to become a valuable contributor. Maybe that'll be the case, or maybe not.
That's a pretty big maybe. Yeah,
I think it is a big maybe, right? Let's See, yeah, I live 4 hours north of SF and haven't been there in years. Yeah, I only occasionally go through there when I have to travel or something. I don't really go down there to like, hey, let's go to San Francisco because there's, what's down there for me. Closest I would get was going down there to the, Marin County or something to run some races, but not much. Dean Mullis, it is devolving into a more natural regional form of government. You think? Yeah, let's see here. Bunch of buses. Oh, okay, I'll be damned. Tim Riley says that a bunch of buses dropped off a bunch in Franklin, Tennessee, suburb of Nashville. Okay, yeah, I had heard some people saying that they were going to be taking, I don't know, I heard the number of like 600 people to Tennessee, and I thought, wow, what's going on there? Like, well, what's happening in Tennessee that these people want to go? Is it because it's a free state? Because they've got like good gun laws there or something? Or why would they want to go to Tennessee? Why are people from Senegal wanting to go to Tennessee or any other city for that matter? You got to ask that question, right? There's got to be something there for them. So, yeah, it's interesting, man. Really interesting. There's a lot of talk about the cartels, right? That the Mexican cartels are profiting from this. And I think that's probably 100% true. That's they're the ones that are ferrying these people from the airports or wherever their port of entry is into Mexico. They're the ones that are shepherding them to the border, these cartels. And they're not doing that because they're wanting to help immigrants. They're doing that because it's a money grab. It's a business, right? And I would say that, yes, the cartels are doing that. But I would also say this, that in many ways, our own government, our own federal government is a cartel. Because if you look at the definition of a cartel, look up the definition of a cartel. And one of the definitions in there says that it's a group of parties, factions, or nations united in a common cause. I'll read that one more time. It says a group of parties, factions, or nations united in a common cause. So how can you argue that these countries aren't united in that effort when day one, hey, let's open up the border, and then now we've had 7 million people come across the border, and now all of a sudden, because it's an election year, it's a problem. You don't think there's some form of benefit going to the federal government and their constituents? I think, in my opinion, I think yes. What do you think?
I think yes. The other thing that I thought with the immigrants coming across was to promote the Great Reset, because there was going to be crime, and it would just make it more valid that we needed to get rid of guns because of all this.
There's an element of that. And I was going to touch on that here in just a moment. I think that's a valid concern and not out of the bounds of what some of these people would be willing to do. But I will talk on that here in just a minute. But I wanted to ask the question, who's coming here? Who are these people, right? And for many years, it was always like South Americans coming to flee Cuba or whatever, seeking political asylum and all these sort of things. But when I started seeing like massive groups of people coming from Africa, that was like the eye opener for me. Like, man, this is like not the way it's been. Interesting. And then I started kind of looking into it and getting a little bit more, just poking around, trying to like pay attention to it, because it is going to affect us all, whether or not we want to acknowledge that at this point. Right. So what was surprising to me is that, were you going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say that we've been to a small island in the Caribbean with the people there who have never left that island. And I would say that none of them really sought to leave that island. So there definitely has to be an incentive for these people who are leaving their
homeland, yeah.
to come here. They're leaving everything to come here.
Right.
So
Yeah.
definitely there's some incentive they're giving.
Of course. At great expense to probably them. They're not being paid to come here. They're actually finding money of their own to like fund their travels here. But they've obviously been given promises to, once they get here, hey, this is where you need to go. This is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to see when you get to, Border Patrol is going to come scoop you up. They're going to process you, and then they'll put you on a bus and you'll go to, whatever city you've been assigned. So they have a script. They have an idea of what's going to happen. They're not just like willy-nilly coming here and like, hey, what's going to happen when we get to the border? No, they fucking know. This is a well-coordinated effort. And that's what I think a lot of people are missing. It's deeper than just a bunch of people that want to come to America. There's a reason behind all this. So this next video kind of shows a change in the demographic, at least from my perspective. What I want you to key in on is right at the end of this video, they show a graph showing the increase in the amount of Chinese migrants that have come here. The first 10 years is now dwarfed by this last year, the amount that have come over the border. And that's what I want you to kind of just think about and focus on as you listen to this short clip.
As soon as we pull up, they rush towards us. My mic not even on, but that doesn't stop this crowd of Chinese migrants from venting to producer Yongsheng. They're angry having to wait in the cold for Border Patrol. This is just one of 3 makeshift border camps we stop at in eastern San Diego County. Alongside migrants from Latin America, at each camp, we meet dozens from China. The numbers reflect the surge. From 2013 to 2022, CBP recorded fewer than 16,000 Chinese migrants illegally crossing the U.S. southern border. This past year alone, more than 31,000. That's roughly double the prior 10 years combined.
Yeah, so roughly double the amount just this last year when you combine the last 10 years. Combine the last 10 years, last year was double that. And, there's obviously a big surge right now. I don't know exactly why that's happening or whatnot. I don't even know if it really matters why it's happening. It's just the fact that it is happening is most concerning to me. Yeah. I'm telling you, the Bay Area is kind of crazy. There's obviously nice places, as there is everywhere. Everywhere has their kind of bad sides of town or what have you. But the places that used to be nice are not as nice as they used to be. And I think that's just going to be getting worse and worse and worse. The Chinese-backed cartels are a scary thought, considering what their backed jihads have been doing in Darfur and elsewhere to secure Chinese and Islamic interests. Yeah, I don't know much about that. The Chinese-backed cartels. I'm sure every society has their form of cartel, if you will. People that are acting kind of in their own interest outside of the bounds of what is accepted or legal. And, and I'm sure that every place has that. Yes, man, Hilltop. Yeah, I'm going to get to that, dude. He says, so what is the solution? What is the answer? Is there no hope? No, there's a solution. It's definitely a solution, man. It's probably not one that's worthy of the problem, but there is a solution, in my opinion. So we'll talk about that here in just a moment. But yeah, we got a lot of Chinese nationals and stuff coming across now. It's just kind of weird. I think the monetary piece of the puzzle is pretty easy to flesh out if you do a little bit of investigation. The other reasons, in my opinion, are not nearly as easy to pin down. We can all speculate, like I said earlier, right? Because they're not really telling us shit that makes sense. They're just telling us lies. So it's really easy to, speculate. And in some doing of that, sometimes the speculation becomes conspiratorial or nefarious, right? But it's not hard to imagine those things being reality, given the history of our policymakers, given what these people have done in the past, and given what they are currently doing. It's not hard to imagine nefarious intent with respect to some of the things that are being proposed. One of those things is voting for illegals, right? And I think there was a politician, I think it was Dick Durbin or some knucklehead like that. I heard them saying, that they were proposing that we allow some of these people to vote or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's always been the play, as I said earlier, from liberals, is to promote that permanent underclass so that they're dependent upon the handouts from daddy government. But, is the underclass, the people that they're getting here, are they more likely to vote red, or are they more likely to vote blue? Is that something that's locked in or baked in for the Democrats? What do you think?
Well, like I said, I think as they came over the border, they've already signed their voting.
You're just speculating, though, right?
I'm speculating.
Right.
Yes, they come with a little packet. I'm sure that
Right.
in that, and like I said, I'm just guessing.
Right.
But that was their voting sheet, and
Well, you understand that, like, no place in the United States is it legal for an illegal alien to vote. There's no place, no 50 of our states where any state or federal election, it's legal for an illegal alien to vote. So that isn't something that's currently accepted. Not to say that they couldn't fabricate something down the road, I guess, because, it seems like there's been people who have voted that aren't even alive. So, again, we're talking about nefarious intent, but I think that given histories and things that have happened in the past, it's not outside of the bounds of what could happen. But there is no signing up illegals to vote, because that just isn't a thing. What is a thing is that there are some places, there is 4 places, in fact, where it's legal in some municipalities, in some states, for illegal aliens to vote. And those places are District of Columbia, imagine that, DC, Maryland, Vermont, and California. All bastions of conservatism, right? Yeah. Where they have local elections where they will allow illegal aliens to vote, with the idea behind that, because, well, they live in this community, their kids go to these schools, so we're going to let them, vote on the school board or whatever, right? Or some bullshit like that. But I guess my question to that is, isn't that just the camel's nose getting under the tent? Isn't that what that's all about? Right? Just like they did with gay marriage, where they said, oh no, this is just in San Francisco, this is a local issue. And now you have it in damn near every state in the union, where it's federally recognized, but it's also in a plurality, or a majority, I should say, of our states where it's legal. So it's just another way to get the camel's nose under the tent, is it not?
yeah. But when you used to go vote, you would show your ID, and you would also do a thumbprint on the side as an
Yeah, yeah.
identification, right? So
Right.
we don't do that anymore, because that's discrimination.
Yeah.
So what's to stop an illegal from voting?
Well, I mean, there's nothing to stop something for the people that are corrupt that want to change what the rules are. The rules can always be changed. And we see that happening all the time, if it's going to suit certain people. And that's why we have a 2-tier justice system, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have people that commit crimes that are not given the same consideration if you had have committed that crime. So they can make whatever rules they want. So I agree with what you're saying, but again, it's something that we haven't, like, ratified in this country to say, oh yeah, illegals can vote. But going back to my local election thing there, that's just the camel's nose under the tent, man. I guarantee you, there's going to be more of that coming in more states, guaranteed. Not even going to lose that debate. So let's see here. What does old Dollar General have to say? The hope might actually be with the illegals and befriending them and hopefully uniting against the dear leaders. Yeah, that would be the way to go. And I've said that for a long time, that if we could ever unite 350 million people together, they would be powerless. But that's not how people work, unfortunately, because people are driven by their own self-interest and fear. And that's what motivates people. So I would agree with you, man. I think that would be a fantastic solution, because it's not that many of them. There's a lot of us. But what they wind up doing is making an example out of you. And every government has the ability to do that to people. That's just the way government is. They're not going to lose. You're going to go up against government. Yeah. Remember the tank man? Remember that shit in Tiananmen Square? I bet you do. You haven't heard from him since, huh? Or many of the people that were a part of his family, I imagine. So it's just that kind of thing, right? You speak out too far, and next thing you know, you're in a jail cell somewhere, waiting to be extradited, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, I like the way you're thinking, though. Yeah, we gotta unite some way for sure. Let's see, and so many do come from socialist or communist countries, so they're wise to the BS too. Yeah. I wish that were to be the case, man. Wouldn't that be awesome if they were all coming here and they all had the same ideas as maybe people that align with our way of thinking might think? Wouldn't that be fantastic? Another 7 million people to build the community of like-mindeds. Now we're just in fantasy land. But yeah, that's not the way it works, man. Gosh damn it. Oh man, I don't know. Yeah. Also too, there's been a lot of talk about the numbers of military-aged men that are coming across the border. I've heard that a lot, right? Oh, look at them all. They're all military-aged men and stuff. And I heard a recent interview with Joe Rogan did with Dr. Phil, the charlatan himself, Dr. Phil. He was mentioning how he was concerned about these capable individuals and how they could potentially coordinate an attack of sorts on, anything in our country, infrastructure wise or otherwise. And I think there's a lot of validity to that claim, because the fact is we don't know who's come here. We don't know anything about these people, but yet they've allowed them in. Isn't that interesting, right? Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that 99% of all the millions of people that have come here are going to be a net positive for this country, right? I believe that number to be wildly charitable, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, that the other 1% will be a burden on our society or maybe do bad things. That 1% is 70,000 people that will be a net negative on our country. 70,000 people. That's just a mere 1% of all of those millions. Let that sink in for just a second. I mean, seriously, but yet you, as an American citizen, have to get half undressed to fly on a fucking airplane. You see, it's not really about your safety or caring for you. It's about instilling fear and getting you to comply. These are our leaders. But hey, go down and vote for your team and get your little sticker. and that'll make everything better. It's an interesting thing, man, that they've got that people that much brainwashed where they can't see the reality of who it is they're voting for. People have been in politics for 45 fucking years and haven't done nothing. But yet now they're at the top of the hill.
And they look like corpses.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just an amazing thing that people are so blinded by the things that are right before them that they can't even just think for a moment, like, hey, let me like noodle this through and see why this is like the way it is, and let me try to make some sense of all these things that they've said to me that aren't true. You know, it's just an amazing thing. Another thing that's been floated out there. Yeah, I agree, man. Fearful people. They're easy to control. Yeah, agreed. There's also something else that's been floated out there, and it's citizenship for military service. I don't know where I first heard that, but when I heard that, it was like, that's really just not a good idea, in my opinion. You might have your viewpoint on why you think that's a good idea, if that makes sense to you, but it doesn't make any sense to me. For a lot of reasons, but it never really occurred to me until I watched this video that Brett Weinstein was talking with Joe Rogan. And he brought something up that I just really hadn't considered yet. And when he brought it up, it was even more frightening, in my opinion. Because if that were to ever be the case, I think that I could see where that would be something that could happen. But let me see if I can roll this tape. It's actually a little low on the audio, guys, so you might need to listen up on this one. But it's a short video, but it was something that I hadn't considered, and it makes, in my opinion, kind of a lot of sense to at least consider. Let's see here. Here we go.
There is talk about the possibility of trading citizenship for military service. I think that's a very frightening prospect, but I didn't invent the idea. It has been discussed, and the problem is that to the extent that we saw things like the vaccine mandate drive out the skeptics from the military, this process would also bring in a lot of people into military service who would have more reason to follow immoral orders than a citizen soldier who had been American their whole life.
Yeah, more reason to follow immoral orders than a citizen soldier. Because I think the argument's always been that, you know what? The people that are serving our military, the people that are in our military, these are people that love our country. These are people that would fight and die for our country. And they have an allegiance to the people that live in this country because they're their neighbors. They're their brothers, their sons, their daughters, all of those things, right? There was always that argument that, they'll never turn the military's never going to turn and fire on American citizens. Well, I mean, we've seen that that's happened before in the Civil War, but I digress. I think that there's an element of truth to that I think that there would be a very high moral conflict that a lot of people would have on turning weaponry and, doing that to their citizens. I'm not saying that they wouldn't do it. I know that people are just following orders, right? I'm not saying that would never happen, but I'm saying there would be less likely to happen from somebody who's a citizen. But somebody who has no allegiance to this country, somebody that, they're looking to gain something like citizenship. Hey, I get to be a citizen. All I got to do is like carry out orders, boss. Yes, I'll do that. So, I'd never considered that, but it makes a lot of sense, kind of, if you think about it, like, hey, that could actually happen. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you'd brought up before about the collapse. That's another area that I think is part of this, potentially, from the standpoint of conspiratorial, nefarious, thinking about it. Yeah. Are they not doing things that would accelerate a collapse when they do the things that they've done, both to our economy and to the morale and to our infrastructure and to everything in this country? Aren't they doing that just by the nature of all the things that they've done policy wise? So it's not hard to imagine that they're doing this in an accelerated fashion so that they can run in with a solution, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Great Reset's been something that they've talked about a lot. And that could be a part of the reason why they're inviting people in from the millions. It's not hard to believe because of these actions. They've invited people in that have no allegiance to this country or its cultural traditions or laws.
Right. I think that it would help push their agenda to get rid of the Second Amendment. Because of the crime that would come in and it's these horrible guns that are killing all of these people. And
well, that's the message they try to push with all their arguments.
Right. But I think it's going to be accelerated so that the citizens will begin to believe it and then possibly go that direction.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, that's the way it's always going to be. So what'll happen is people will be so beaten down from all of the violence and the crime and all of the things. They just want their life to go back to normal. When things get so chaotic and so disruptive, normal people are just going to say, make it go away, make it stop. I don't care what you have to do. Yes, you're taking people's rights away, but you know what? It needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's all part of the play of the the collapse of anything. That's what they're going to do for sure. I mean, it's clear, but everything that they're doing is making this country less united rather than
right.
more united, and that's what they want to do. They want to split us up into camps. I don't know. What do you think about all that?
I think it's horrible. I think that we're going to end up with more homeless, probably more violence. I would love to say that it's going to go on the positive side, but I don't see that.
Yeah.
And we already have enough, and we're not taking care of the people that are here, that legally live here. We're not taking care of them. And we're letting these immigrants come in, illegal immigrants come in, and they're not going to get taken care of. We're not even taking care of our own citizens.
Right. Yeah. A lot of these migrants right now are going to blue states and sanctuary cities, but, I've also heard people going to places that are maybe not blue states like Tennessee or whatnot, and they're not going to sanctuary cities. So, I do remember when I was in high school, Ronald Reagan was president. And at the time I was in high school, I remember them, I can't remember what class it was or whatever, but they were talking about the immigration in this country. And I think at that point in time, there was some kind of an estimate, and I could be totally wrong on this, but I seem to recall somewhere around like 8 to 12 million people, illegal aliens in this country. And I really just do wonder what that number would be today if we ever were able to get an accurate assessment. But, given the latest numbers that are just over 7 million, again, that's just the ones that we know about. And they never asked the citizens. These politicians never asked us if we wanted our country to be changed overnight culturally, right? But millions of people have been invited here. And now what's the answer moving forward? What do you do?
They'd like you to take one in and then host one in your house.
That's what they'd like to do, but what's the answer? Do you have an answer, or?
I think they should do it. I think that any of these laws that they try to push, they should first test out on themselves before pushing them on to the citizens.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, was Ronald Reagan right? A nation that cannot control its borders? Is it not a
Yes.
nation? You know, I remember when I was listening to talk radio years ago, I listened to a guy named Michael Savage. I don't even know if he's still around, he's still alive or whatever, but I used to listen to him and he'd talk about borders, language, and culture. And there is so much truth in that right there. That's what unites a country, to have defined borders, to have a common language where everybody is speaking the same language.
Mhm.
It's not to say you can't come here and speak your language with your people, but to have a commonly accepted language that we can all unite behind is very important, because without it, what you wind up with is a balkanization of your society, and you've got just this splintering of everything, making you totally less united. And
Right.
and then the cultural things that bind us, the holidays, the traditions, the things like that, those are all things that these people that are coming here do not share with us. And so it's such a reckless like endeavor that these people have.
Guarantee they'll be on your calendar.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, guys. I think, Hilltop Blues asked a question earlier, what's the solution? And I would say that that's a question that I personally don't have an answer for, a strong answer for at this time. And I'm still pondering what the answer might be. I would say this, though, that if I could assemble a group, let's say a small group of people that were constitutionally minded citizens, we could probably hammer out a solution to this issue in an afternoon. I think that could actually happen, but there will be no solutions from government. They don't have any desire to fix this problem. As I said to start with, it's a political juggernaut that nobody wants their fingerprints on. But now that they're here, again, you can't unring the bell. So we have all these people here. What are we going to do with it? And I would say this is what I would do if it were up to me. I'm not the king for the day. I'm not the president. I'm not anybody. But if it were up to me, this is what I would like to see happen. I would send these illegals to the home district of the politicians who were in favor of this. So let's take Nancy Pelosi, for example. She's pretty high up in the Democrat leadership. She's pretty high up on the, Team Blue.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say we send these people to San Francisco in her district, but we don't send them to the Tenderloin. We don't send them to where there's already bums shitting on the street and drug-addled mental patients walking around. We don't do that. No, we send these homeless, we send these illegal aliens. We send them to the high district.
Neighborhood.
We send them to Nob Hill, where all of the rich people live, where her house is. That's where we start. We send them to Kennebunkport, Maine. We send them to Martha's Vineyard, because you know what? Obama goes to Martha's Vineyard. You know who else goes to Martha's Vineyard? George W. Bush. And every other president goes to places like that. So that's where we need to start busting these people. Don't send them to the places that already suck. These shithole cities that the liberals have destroyed, that it's just going to make it worse for the people in the surrounding areas. No, we start at the top. We send them to where these people live. We send them up to Malibu, where Ellen lives. And Oprah has homes. You see where I'm going with this? That's a solution that would work, guys, because you know what? That's what they listen to. That's what these people respond to. They respond to money and power. They're not going to listen to you. You don't mean shit. I don't mean shit. So that's just the reality of it. That's the first place that I would start. I wanted to watch this last video because this is what some of these politicians are asking people to do. They're asking them to host families. And I think that's a great idea. But where I think that's a better idea is that this is also part of my solution. You send these people to the politicians that supported it, because you know what? They live in big houses and they got lots of rooms. They can afford to take a host family. Nancy Pelosi's got a lot of ice cream. I've seen it.
Yeah, she just showed us all. during COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where you start. I believe in host families. I think they would be a very viable solution. But see, what it would also do is it would stop the flow of these people like overnight. That's on the real. And so let's check this out. But they're asking people, these liberal mayors, right? Eric Adams and whoever else, right? And these places that are just tore up already. They're asking people, hey, we'll keep the money local. We'll pay you. We've got federal money to put these people up. We're not going to send it out of the community to some NGO. We'll pay you. What do you mean you'll pay? Where are you getting the money, fool? Right? Let's check it out.
Migrants will live with American families inside of private residences.
Alan and Jessica Stokes called the state to sign up to be a host family. It took less than an hour for the displaced migrants to be dropped off at their door.
I gotta get sheets on the bed. How many people are coming?
You can hear this come directly from the mayors of New York City, of Boston, of Chicago.
The city could pay people to house migrants in their apartments.
If you have an extra room, please consider hosting a family.
A lot of mayors are coming out with this plan right now to compensate American families to take in migrants. Now, when you look at the state of the U.S. economy,
yeah. So there you go, guys. That's what
you even want to.
That's what you're working. Well, I mean, there's people like that lady. She sounded really excited about it. Yeah, she was like, "Oh boy, we're gonna have somebody in our house."
Yay.
You know,
Tell those people trash our house.
Well, I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, maybe it'll work out for them. That's what I hope. Maybe it'll be a good decision on their part, and they won't get accosted or assaulted or something bad happen to them, because I don't want to see that. But it's just the stupidity of all this, man. You know, I mean, I don't get it. Yeah, you're referring to that ice cream gig. Yeah, that was pretty way out. You know, people are like having trouble getting food and shit into their house because the stores are stripped from all of the looting and COVID lockdowns. And she's like showing all her gourmet ice cream and shit in her house, you know, like, and you know, she didn't go to the store to buy it. It was one of her slaves that she sent down there to, like, you know, do her business. So yeah, it's pretty sick. These people, they are absolutely that. Won't have to go to the salon. Yeah, she needs to go somewhere. Yeah, I would say another aspect of what we can do to provide a solution would be to shut down these NGOs, you know. And all they're there is to just merge and launder money from, you know, between the private sector and the federal government. And I think if we were to do that, we would make it less enticing for people to come here illegally. Because I've said this before, but it's actually a pretty solid analogy in my opinion. But if you take a cat can, you know, a can of cat food and put it on your porch, eventually you're going to have more cats showing up. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. You take the cat food away, and eventually those cats are going to go home. They're going to go back to where they came from or go somewhere else. And that's what we need to do here. So if you shut down those NGOs, you lose that incentive for people to come here. And I think that would be a really great place to start. And then I think lastly, what my totalitarian solution would be, because I'm a dictator and I'm going to just rule with an iron fist, I'm going to provide zero tolerance with border countries. Because make no mistake about it, these people are doing this willingly, and they know what's happening and coming into their country. There's surveillance everywhere. There's drones, there's cameras, there's all of this. Don't tell me for a moment this is just like, oh, we didn't know they're coming to your border. No, they know, and our people know. That's why it's happening right now, because our people know and they're allowing it. But if it were me, I wouldn't allow it. If I was put in charge for the day, I would send these people back. I would load them back on a plane, and I would fly their ass back into Mexico and say, now it's your problem. You deal with them. I don't know where the fuck they came from, but you need to get them back and get them gone.
And just think, if they're here and they have children, they'll be legal citizens.
Well, that's the way it's set up now. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the way it's set up now. And that's that's not part of the solution.
No, I'm saying I don't think that should happen.
No, of course it shouldn't happen. All this stuff shouldn't happen. Any sane person wouldn't allow this to happen, but we have people that are not using their best judgment. And they're the people who are in charge of our policies in our country. It's a really weird time, man. You know, I've said this before, but I'm pretty excited about the future, just from the standpoint of being a voyeur in all of this, which I'm getting ready to witness. I'm only for myself thinking it's something that I'm anticipating, but I don't look forward to this for my children or my grandchildren. I wish we could leave them a better place, right? I wish they had a better, rosier future. But when you see what's happening here, it's not really that rosy. But that's what I would do to solve the problem. I'm going to round it up there as far as what I think would really take a good chunk out of people wanting to come here is dealing with it in that fashion. I think that's a reasonable solution. I think it's well rationed and well thought out. Don't believe it. I just made it up. No. I mean, there needs to be something happening, and I just don't know how we're gonna make it better from the standpoint of politically. And I know there's nothing that we can do other than just kind of talk about it and vent and do all those things. And you know, I wish I could leave you guys with a better solution. But I don't have any other answers other than to say that all we can do, right, as always, is just continually to do the things that we know are within our control to make ourselves better and a little bit stronger. Things are definitely going to get spicy in 2024. There's just no doubt about that. It's going to get spicy here leading up to this election. So, yeah, learn to build your skills and expand your networks. Build your community and make yourself a little bit more whole each day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do you have to say? Is that all we were going to talk about tonight, or?
I think that's all we were going to talk about.
Okay. Well, hey guys, I really appreciate you hanging out with us for almost nearly 2 hours of us talking about a Senator Ted Cruz from Texas has book. What's that mean? I don't know what that means. He has a book. Yep. Build community and keep on gardening. Yeah, man. Yeah, that's how I see it. You know, I'm very optimistic on that. I mean, you know, I can sit up here and talk like I just talked tonight, and it doesn't sound all that rosy, but I am very optimistic about everything that we have available to us right now and the opportunities we all have to just fill those gaps that we all have, right? We look at the things that we're like, hey, I probably need to do that. And just go knock it out and do it. And then pretty soon, you know, a month goes by, 6 months goes by, and you're like way better off. And that's really just, that's the only solution, you know, that.
I think if all the citizens could unite,
yes,
come to a common ground, we probably could turn everything around.
Yeah.
But that's huge.
Oh, that would be like, that would be just an amazing utopian, like, it's never going to happen. Just say that it's never going to happen. But I'm extremely optimistic, and I'm glad every day to get up and just live the life that I live, and, you know, share it with her and have the opportunity to come on here and ramble on about, you know,
just as long as you get breakfast, huh?
Yeah. I mean, we still need to eat dinner too. So I'm always thinking about food. But hey, thanks again, guys. Remember, you can catch the audio broadcast, rebroadcast of this on Spotify, Audible, iHeartRadio, and Google. And we're going to bug out tonight, but thanks again. And we will see you next week.
Thank you for all dropping in. Have a good evening.
Right on, guys. Later.